Hello students, my name is Niyati Said and thanks for watching Edupedia word videos. My topic for the presentation is digestion of food. Okay. So, the process of digestion is accomplished by mechanical and chemical processes. The buccal cavity, it performs two major functions: mastication of food and facilitation of swallowing. Okay? The teeth and the tongue, with the help of saliva, masticate and mix up the food thoroughly. Mucus in saliva, it helps in lubricating and adhering the masticated food particles into a bolus. The bolus is then conveyed into the pharynx and then into the esophagus by swallowing or deglutition. Okay, the bolus further passes down through the esophagus by successive waves of muscular contraction called peristalsis. Okay, this wave-like movement of food bolus is known as peristalsis. The gastroesophageal sphincter, it controls the passage of food into the stomach. The saliva secreted into the oral cavity contains electrolytes such as sodium ions, potassium ion, chloride ion and bicarbonate ions. Okay, and along with these electrolytes it also has enzymes, okay, and salivary amylase and lysozyme. The chemical process of digestion is initiated in the oral cavity by the hydrolytic action of the carbohydrate splitting enzyme, the salivary amylase. Okay? It is seen that about 30% of starch is hydrolyzed here by this enzyme at an optimum pH of 6.8 into the disaccharide and maltose. Okay, lysozyme present in the saliva acts as an antibacterial agent that prevents infection. Okay, so starch in presence of salivary amylase at the pH 6.8 is get converted into maltose. Okay, so just know that the digestion, in short, it is a conversion of the complex insoluble food materials into simple and absorbable form. It includes three mechanical processes. First is mastication, that means how you chew your food. Okay, deglutition, that means swallowing. Okay, the bolus is conveyed into the pharynx and then into the esophagus by swallowing or deglutition. Okay, and the final is the peristalsis. It is a wave-like movement of food bolus. Okay. Now, the digestion in buccal cavity, as I have already explained to you in detail. So, only starch digestion takes place in the buccal cavity. Ptyalin, it helps to convert starch, which is polysaccharide, into disaccharides. Okay, and about 30% of the starch is digested by ptyalin. Okay. Now comes the esophagus. Esophagus is a tube that connects the mouth to the stomach. Okay, you can say that it is like a pipe that connects the mouth to the stomach. It runs through the thoracic cavity. Okay, now the question arises, where is it located? So it lies behind the windpipe. Okay, the one we call it in Hindi saans ki nali. Okay, and the trachea has an epiglottis. Epiglottis, it prevents food from entering the windpipe. Okay, otherwise it may interfere with your breathing process. Okay, and it moves the food to the esophagus while swallowing. Okay, food travels down the esophagus through a series of the involuntary rhythmic contractions known as peristalsis. Okay, the third mechanical process we have read in the first slide of this presentation. So what's the function of peristalsis? The lining of the esophagus, it secretes mucus. It helps in the smooth sailing of the bolus. Okay, second is the lubrication purpose, and third is to support the movement of food. Okay, suppose this is digestive tract and this are food bolus or chyme. As you can see, this is the wave of relaxation and this is the wave of contraction, and this way food travel down the esophagus through a series of involuntary rhythmic contractions. Okay, now the esophageal sphincter, what is it? Bolus, it reaches the stomach. It must pass through a muscular ringed wall called esophageal sphincter, which we also call as cardiac sphincter. Okay, what is it called as? Cardiac sphincter. Okay, now what is the function? Function is obviously to prevent the stomach acids from backflowing into the esophagus. Okay, this is our cardiac sphincter and this is our pyrolic sphincter. So this cardiac sphincter, it prevents the stomach acid, because we already know that stomach, it churns the food with the help of acids such as HCl. So HCl ka pH is very low. Okay, so it prevents the stomach acid from backflowing into the esophagus. Okay, now have you ever noticed that if you have ever drunk something too fast, then you start to cough off? And have you ever heard someone say that your drink went down the wrong way? That person meant that it went down your windpipe by mistake. This happens when the epiglottis doesn't have enough time to flop down. Okay, and you cough involuntary. Okay, involuntary, that means that is not in your control to clear up your windpipe so that it does not interfere with your breathing process. Okay, once food has entered the esophagus, it does not just drop right into your stomach. Please note that, students. Okay, instead, muscles in the wall of the esophagus move in a very wavy wave to slowly squeeze the food through the esophagus. This takes about 2 to 3 seconds. Okay, finally, see you in tummy, that is stomach. Stomach stores food for about 4 to 5 hours. It is mixed with the gastric juice by churning movements and is converted into acidic pasty form, that is known as chyme. Okay, pepsinogen in stomach with the action of HCl get converted into pepsin. Proteins in the stomach with the help of pepsin get converted into peptones, and the prorenin in the presence of HCl get converted into renin. Casein, or the milk protein, in the presence of renin gets converted into paracasein, and the paracasein in the presence of calcium ion get converted into Ca paracaseinate, that is curd. Okay, and calcium paracaseinate in the presence of pepsin get converted into peptone. Please note that these 4, they take place only in infants. Okay, now there are around 3 phases of gastric digestion. First is the cephalic phase. In the cephalic phase of digestion, the anticipation of food prepares the body for the digestion, absorption, and the use of nutrients in food. Okay, the sensory aspect of food such as sight, smell, all these senses, they influence eating behavior. For example, the smell of your pizza from the Domino's or Pizza Hut, they can set the stage for overreacting. This occurs as a result of the activation of medulla oblongata, which is present in our brain by a food related sensory input. The medulla oblongata, it controls autonomic functions like heartbeat and respiration. The feel of food in the mouth or the thoughts related to the food, they send signal to the medulla oblongata via the vagus nerve to stimulate the release of stomach chemicals, pepsin and hydrochloric acid, which plays a role in the breakdown of food. Okay, am I clear? Now comes the gastric phase. After cephalic phase, the second phase of stomach digestion is gastric phase. The gastric phase of digestion, it begins when food enters the stomach. It causes the stomach to extend. Okay, the stomach then continues to release the digestive chemicals, hydrochloric acid and pepsin, first stimulated in the cephalic phase. This process helps to improve food intake and of course the digestion. When food is in the stomach or mouth, the vagovagal reflex communicates which nutrients such as carbohydrate or protein components are present. Based on the feedback, the required level of digestive enzymes or chemicals are released, all solely dependent on the feedback. What is present, carbohydrate or a protein? So there are the taste receptors in the mouth that can detect which nutrients have been eaten. Okay, now comes the third phase, which is known as intestinal phase. Stomach chemical secretion ceases once the intestinal phase of digestion begins. Okay, this action is initiated by the stretching of the duodenum and the secretion of the hormone enterogastron. Okay, the duodenum is a short piece of the small intestine that connects the stomach with the remainder of the small intestine. When this process occurs, appetite decreases in order to stop food consumption. That's in where we feel the strength of fullness. Okay, now the outline of the stomach digestion. The gastric phase accounts for about 2 to 3rd of gastric secretions. Ingested food stimulates gastric activity by stretching the stomach and by raising the pH of its content. Okay, and thus it results in a cascade of events leading to the release of HCl by parietal cells of stomach to lower the pH and break apart the food, that is to break down the complex insoluble food into the simple absorbable food. Gastric secretion is stimulated chiefly by 3 chemicals. One is acetylcholine, histamine and gastrin. Okay, below pH of 2, stomach acid inhibits the parietal cells and G cells. Okay, this forms the negative feedback loop that winds down the gastric phase as the need for pepsin and the hydrochloric acid thus declines. Okay, now you may ask a question, what's the reason that the stomach does not digest itself? Okay, so it has a protective mechanism. It has 3 protective mechanisms to be more specific. First, the stomach only secretes a small amount of gastric juices until food is present. Second, the secretion of mucus, it coats the lining of the stomach, thus it protects it from the gastric juices. Okay, and the third mechanism is the digestive enzyme pepsin is secreted in an inactive protein called pepsinogen, which is then converted to pepsin in the increased presence of HCl, okay, at the pH of 1. Digestion in a small intestine. Chyme, or you can say the mucus that covers the food bolus is known as chyme. Okay, chyme is mixed with succus entericus, pancreatic juice and bile juice. Pancreatic juice and bile, it reaches the duodenum through hepatopancreatic duct. Okay, Now we'll see the digestion in a small intestine. Okay. Miscibility. The main function of the bile salt is to aid or to help in the absorption of fat and oils in the stomach, which is necessary due to lack of miscibility of fat in water. Okay. Miscibility, it describes the ability of two substances to mix together. Okay. Have you seen oil and the water mixing together? No. Okay, so miscibility is what that describes the ability of two substances to mix together. Oil do not mix well with the otherwise water-based contents of the intestine. Instead, ingested fat, they band together to form large cubules that are hard for the intestine to absorb. Okay, as you can see that fat is broken down into fat droplets. Okay. And now the action of bile. Bile, it helps in the digestion by emulsification. What do you mean by emulsification? It is the conversion of fat into micelles or tiny droplets. It provides large surface area for the action of lipase on fat. Bile, it also activates lipase. Okay. Pancreatic juice secretion, because the pancreas secretes so many enzymes, it is important that pancreatic juice only be secreted when there is a food that needs to be digested. Three chemicals that stimulate the pancreas are cholecystokinin, secretin and gastrin. So these are the three chemicals that stimulate the pancreas. The cholecystokinin is made by cells in the intestine when proteins and fat are detected in the digestive tract. These same cells also make another hormone called secretin, which stimulates the pancreas. Okay, as we have just read that there are three chemicals such as cholecystokinin, secretin and gastrin. Okay, and finally gastrin is synthesized by the cells in the stomach. It also makes the pancreas release its digestive juices. What does it do? It hydrolyzes remaining starch into disaccharide. Enterokinin is present in the intestinal juice that activates trypsinogen to active trypsin. Trypsin activates chymotrypsinogen and procarboxypeptidases. Trypsinogen in the presence of enterokinin give rise to trypsin, and chymotrypsinogen in the presence of trypsin give rise to chymotrypsin. Okay. Action of the intestinal juice, enzyme of the intestine, they act on the end product of the above reactions. Like dipeptides, in the presence of dipeptidases, it gives rise to amino acids, and the maltose in the presence of maltase give rise to two molecules of glucose. Okay, lactose in presence of lactase give rise to glucose and galactose. Okay, fully digested semi-fluid and alkaline food is called chyle. Now comes the small intestine. It is responsible for the complete digestion of all bigger molecules known as macromolecules and the absorption of their component molecules. For example, glucose, glycerol, fatty acids, amino acids and nucleotides. Okay. What are the parts of a small intestine? Of course, it is made up of three parts: duodenum, jejunum and ileum. Okay. As you can see, this is the duodenum part, this is the jejunum part, and this end part is the ileum part that empties into the cecum. Cecum is a part of a large intestine. Okay. Now comes the duodenum. What does it do? It is the first part in the duodenum, which is a U-shaped organ. It is approximately 30 centimeter in length. Okay, and this area completes most of the digestion processes, or you can say all macromolecules are broken down here, and the enzymes are secreted into the duodenum, form the pancreas and the gallbladder. Okay, the duodenum is lined by the folds of tissue called villi. The villi are covered by fine brush-like, which is known as microvilli. Okay, these folds, they increase the surface area of the small intestine, and thus it increases the rate of absorption. Of course, when the surface area is more, your rate of absorption will increase many folds. Okay, so which is done by brush-like fine structures known as microvilli. And then comes a jejunum. Jejunum is approximately 2.5 meter long. Although some digestion is completed here, it has more villi and microvilli. Its role is absorption of nutrients. Okay, and then comes ileum, which is the third part. It is approximately 3 to 4 centimeter long. Okay, and it has fewer villi and the microvilli than the other two parts. Although absorption also occurs here, it is responsible for pushing the waste material into the large intestine. Okay, because ileum is the last part of the small intestine and the cecum is the first part of large intestine. So it is responsible for pushing the waste materials into the large intestine. To be more specific, cecum of the large intestine. Okay, as you can see that this is the stomach, this is the cardiac sphincter, this is the pyrolic sphincter. Okay, and thus it gets it is like linked up with the small intestine. This is our small intestine. This is the duodenum part, U-shaped. Okay, and this is your jejunum part, and this is last one is the ileum part. Okay, this indicates your ileum part. This is your ileum part and this is your jejunum part. Okay, and then finally it is like linked up with the cecum of the large intestine. Okay, where water absorption and all takes place. Now we'll read the functions of a small intestine. Around 90% of the digestion and absorption of food occurs in the small intestine. Other 10% it takes place in the stomach and the large intestine. And the main function of the small intestine is the absorption of nutrients and minerals from food. Okay, so what's the main function of a small intestine? Main function is to absorb nutrients and minerals from food. Okay, now comes the digestion of protein. Protein, peptide and amino acid, they are acted all upon by enzymes such as trypsin and chymotrypsin, which is secreted by pancreas, of course, and this breaks them down to smaller peptides. Okay, now comes the digestion of lipid. We have already read the digestion of protein. Now comes the digestion of lipid. Enzymes like lipases, it secretes from the pancreas. It acts on the fat and the lipid in diet. Okay. Now the lipase, it can break down into the smaller parts that can enter the intestinal villi for absorption process. And the digestion of carbohydrates. Carbohydrates, they are broken down to simple sugar. We very well know that carbohydrate on action by hydrolytic chemicals, it gets broken down into simple sugars and monosaccharides such as glucose. Okay, and the pancreatic amylase, it breaks down some carbohydrates to oligosaccharides as well. And the some carbohydrates and the fiber, they pass undigested to the large intestine where they may, depending on their type, be broken down by intestinal bacteria. Okay. Now the absorption in the small intestine, we'll talk about the absorption. Of course, the nutrients and the minerals, they are absorbed by the inner walls of the small intestine into the bloodstream. The nutrients are absorbed by the process of simple and passive diffusion. These all kind of diffusion, such as passive, active and facilitated primary and secondary active transport, they will be studying in detail in my next presentation. Okay, for transport, nutrients commonly rely upon lipids that undergo passive or simple diffusion. Okay, and the short chain fatty acids, they all undergo diffusion. Amino acids, they undergo primary active transport, and glucose, they undergo secondary active transport, and the fructose, they undergo facilitated diffusion. Okay, now comes the absorption in the small intestine. Of course, as I told you, that inner lines of the small intestine, they absorb nutrients and the minerals and the waters. Water, around 80% is absorbed by the small intestine and 10% by the large intestine. Remaining 10% excreted in the feces. Okay, and then electrolytes, vitamins and mineral, they are also absorbed in the small intestine. Okay, now comes this large intestine. Large intestine will be studying parts and the function of it. The large intestine is composed of several very distinctive parts. First is cecum. Okay, colon. The colon consists of 4 parts: ascending colon, transverse colon, descending colon and the sigmoid colon, and the rectum. Okay, see, this is ascending, this is transverse and this is descending, this is the sigmoid colon, and finally it is like attached with the rectum. Okay, and then it finally disposes its fecus through anus. Okay, first section of your large intestines looks like a pouch which is about 2 inches long. Now what's the role? To take in digested liquid from the ileum, okay, and pass it on to the colon. Now comes the colon. Colon is the major section of the large intestine. Function: the principal place for water reabsorption. It absorbs salts when needed. Now what are the components? It consists of 4 parts: ascending, transverse, descending and the sigmoid. Okay, now we'll study ascending colon in detail. Ascending colon is the first portion of the colon. Okay, this is your ascending colon. It pushes any undigested debris up from the cecum just under the right lower end of the liver. Liver is like it is somewhere here. Okay, and now comes the transverse colon. It is the second portion of the colon. Food travels from the left to the right just under your stomach. That means stomach is somewhere here. Okay, and now comes the descending colon, which is the third portion. It pushes its content from the down to the lower left side of the stomach, of course. And then comes the sigmoid colon, which is final S-shaped length of the colon, and it empties into the rectum. Okay, final section, it measures from 1 to 1.6 inches. Okay, and the leftover waste collects there. It expands the rectum and it empties through the anus. Now comes the function of large intestine. Of course, it absorbs water and minerals. It is one of the primary functions is to absorb water. It prepares the waste as a solid stool that can be expelled out from the body. Okay, it absorbs vitamin. That means it is a beneficial bacteria. It has a role in breaking down undigested sugars and fibers into fatty acids. It reduces many vitamins, of which are vitamin K and biotin, which are absorbed back into the stomach. Okay, body. Okay, and the third function is to reduce acidity. Okay, the fatty acids, that is Fa, causes acidic environment. The large intestine, it produces produces alkaline solution that reduces the acidity and it balances the pH in the large intestine. Okay, and it also protects from the infection because its lining is made up of mucus that helps in the protection, or it prevents the harmful bacteria from being reabsorbed into the body. And the fifth and the last function of large intestine is it produces antibody. It helps to boost immunity. It is believed that vermiform appendix may have been a major producer of antibodies at some point in the evolutionary history, but now vermiform appendix is vestigial. Okay, so thank you and stay tuned.